Welcome, everyone. I am Gershon Margolis. I am the founder of Imperial Advisory. We are a fractional CFO firm. So we work with larger clients. We work on an interim basis. So we'll maybe take over if a CFO left, or we'll end up working for the CFO. Take over for a CFO on a temporary basis, or work for the CFO. And with smaller clients, we're sitting in the CFO seat on a part-time basis. We've got an incredible team. Most of our team's got 30 to 40 years of experience, as well as usually around 10 years or more sitting in the CFO seat. And we work with our clients on both, we do part of the leadership team often, especially if we're the CFO, and we help our clients, help them grow, help them really figure out what's holding them back from growth, and hopefully help unlock growth. One of the things that we end up, well, first, let me just say thank you to Tony for producing this, and also thank you to all of the people from our team who've joined, and especially to Dean, who introduced us to our speakers today. And now I'll give my very quick intro of that, and then I will let the speakers take it from there. So one of our, we try to keep this webinar series, the Business Health webinar series, to cover important things that are not directly what we do, but very often relate to what we do. And obviously, as finance people, one of the quickest things that can kill your business is not having cash, right? Because if you don't have cash, your clients, your employees walk out the door. You can't do anything that you need to do. You can't buy inventory, and you can't deliver things to your customers. All sorts of things, bad things happen when you have no cash. So cash is very important, and there's different ways that you can solve cash flow problems. One of those ways is by having a good bank, and we've covered that side of the equation in the past. But today I'm very excited to have Seth and Ava here to talk to us about best practices on getting paid. Because if you deal with that, then you have a lot more predictability, and it's going to free up the cash you need to, or a lot of the cash you need to grow your business. So without further ado, welcome Seth and Ava. Take it away.
Good morning, Gershon, and thank you for that warm intro. My name is Seth Meyer, and I'm joined with my colleague Ava Armand today. We are members of the dispute resolution and construction teams over at Capel, Barnett, Madelon, and Schoenfeld. Dispute resolution is just a nice way of saying we sue people. Our offices are in Syosset, our offices are in the city, our offices are in Florida. I want to thank the Imperial team for hosting us today, and I want to give a special thank you to my dear friend Dean. Well, I don't know if he's going to be my dear friend after this, but we'll see what happens.
Of course, happy to have you here. Thank you for.
Well, today's presentation is about when the business relationship breaks down. Today's presentation only happens because of the strong relationship between Dean and me. As a personal story, as an emerging leader, I was always impressed by Dean's poise, rational thinking, and steady hand in the face of a very tough and demanding company. And I'm sure he brings these skills to his clients today. And Gershon is telling me he wants to hear more of you in public. I said, Dean, you have a face for radio, but we'll see what we can do on Zoom.
Yeah, Seth was telling me how you did things that were unthinkable in a good way over at a prior company where the two of you worked, and how you are a really, really amazing. And I agree with him. I said we have to get you to share some of those things and teach others.
Well, thank you both for all that, but we're here for much more important stuff. So thank you.
All right. So jokes aside, our slides today are football focused, mainly because I have to take an opportunity to use as many football puns as possible, but we're all Knicks fans today, and it was a huge win last night. That being said, we're very excited to present quarterbacking receivables, best practices for getting paid. The playbook for success starts with the special relationship between the CFO and their finance team and the client. The client meets with the business often. The client trusts the CFO to say, do I have the money for this? This is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it. Can we make this happen? And the CFO is in that special place to make those dreams come true. The lawyer is a little jealous. We also have we also care about the business. We want them to grow. We want them to prosper. We don't know how to use Excel, so that always throws us out. But when all three of us are working together, the CFO, the lawyer, and the business, we ensure problems can be minimized, risk can be managed, the business can prosper. The lawyer is best served when the client and the CFO are working together to do the pre-lawyer work, to do the small things a business does in the event things go south. So as Jerry Maguire would say, help me help you. And why do we need this help? Because the world is changing. It's a whole new world. The state of the market. It's not a football pun. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and quite frankly, she's more persuasive than I am. Cash is king has been the adage since day one. If you have cash, you have flexibility, you have the opportunity to grow, mitigate losses, and keep the business going. Credit is tight, credit is expensive. The terms for credit are changing. Banks want established relations, and they want all your deposits. What I'm seeing is two things. One, the business is not in the business of giving out interest-free loans to customers. When they don't pay on time, you're giving them a loan. You're saying, my money is less important than your money. And how this turns into one of the biggest failures, and it makes me concerned, is when I get a call from a client saying, Seth, I had to go to a hard money lender. I had to go to invoice financing. I had to do something to get money, my future money, to pay my problems today. And all that's telling me is our cash flow process has failed. Our collection process has failed, and we need to do something to right the ship. Because if you're taking out a hard money loan, if you're taking out invoice financing, you've given your profit away. If you're getting 70% of your money and you're giving someone else the other 30%, that 30% is your profit, that is your growth, that's your strategic reserve. You're just kicking the can to tomorrow's problem, and eventually there'll be no more invoices to finance. And what are we going to do as a business? In the post-COVID landscape, COVID had been the great reshuffling. You had companies consolidate, you had companies branch into new areas, you had companies go out of business. So what used to be done with a handshake or an understanding that this project will take a certain amount of time has all changed. COVID gave people the opportunity to be more entrepreneurial in both a good way and a bad way. Good way in that potentially your clients emerged out of COVID. A bad way, they're also dealing with people who emerged out of COVID, but may not be as established in the market. So with new relationships, we have new types of due diligence, new types of risk awareness, and ways to, in the most legal way I can say, not get stuck holding the bag if things go south. And with these new relationships are new terms, new conditions. While you may have had a prior relationship where you're going to buy X for Y, you did it on a handshake, everyone was good. Now you're getting given a 100-page contract with new obligations that eat into cash flow, that give you less favorable payment terms. And with those less favorable payment terms, longer pay times, And really now you're financing someone else's business. We want to level the playing field. The finance team, the CFO, is the left tackle to keep the business upright. They're the ones who are going to offer the blindside protection to make sure that business is humming along, that money is coming and going as it should. And if there's a friction point, to start the investigation as to why. Why are the invoices for this company always paid 60 days late? What are we doing to incentivize our customers to pay? What steps are we taking to minimize that? The CFOs are going to be asking those questions first, because at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, when we're running our reports and we're seeing our free cash flow is down, or our payments are lagging 60, 90, 120 days, that's not healthy. That's not good. So you guys are going to see it before we do. And when you start to see it, we want to say something. So the way we're going to look at this is the three phases of the game. Like Bill Belichick says, if you're not winning all three phases, you lost all of them. So a good offense starts with a good defense. Due diligence. What are we looking for before we enter into contract negotiations? Knowing our client, knowing their reputation, knowing our reputation. Contract negotiation. What do we want in a contract? What don't we want in a contract? And what can we fix in a contract? Now, we're in contract and things are going soft. Things are going problematic. We're not getting paid. They're asking for extras. They're putting our feet to the fire. They're making us seem like the bad guy. What do we do here? How to protect ourselves when things start to go south? Offense. We need to get our money back. We need to stop the bleeding. We need to go on offense. We need to get what's ours. Collection. Are we using a lawyer? Are we using a collection agency? How are we making sure we're getting paid? Are we going into litigation? How are we enforcing our rights? What does the contract let us do? Did we protect ourselves earlier on because a good defense is a good offense? Special teams. This is the stuff that lawyers, Ava and myself, get excited for. We get a judgment. How are we going to ruin their day for ruining your month? Are we freezing bank accounts? Are we going after company assets? Are we leaning their projects? Are we bringing them in for depositions? We're at the point now, if we're using our special teams, we have protected ourselves, we have gone on offense, and now we're kicking that extra point. I will say from experience, our position to help the business as the lawyer is the strongest before you sign the contract, because the terms, the rules of the game are not yet set. As soon as the contract is signed, everyone is going to look back to the contract. So if you're the one giving out terms, you're going to want someone to rush into a contract that conceivably is going to be more favorable to you. If you're being pushed to sign a contract, take a deep breath. I can't tell you the number of calls I have with people that says, I'm not going to review this. I'm just going to sign it because they're not going to change anything. Well, I've always rejected that philosophy, because when you're going into contract together, you're at the point where everyone decided we want to work together. So that's your best opportunity to get what you want. Once a contract is signed, you've established the rules of the game. And to change the rules once the game is started tends to be harder. Oh, but I want the 3-pointer to count for 8 points now. Well, you should have negotiated that earlier on. Oh, I need to get 20% up front, otherwise the unions are going to be nipping at my toes. Should have negotiated that earlier on. Because what happens is a lot of our clients, or the people that we're getting contracts from, they're using those contracts for their business certainty. So once we start changing it after the fact, we run into issues. So early intervention is key. Don't get sacked. Due diligence. The number one place I'm telling my clients to search first is court websites. In New York, You can use what's called NICEF. It has public filings of all lawsuits. If you're about to get into a contract with someone, see who they've sued. See who they've been sued by. Are you dealing with someone who's very litigious? At the first dispute, are they going to say, fine, we're going to sue you? Are we going to run to, or does everyone have to sue them to get paid? There's also a similar docket to look for mechanics liens. Do our contractors who work with a potential client having to lien property to get paid? These are questions that there are being asked because we don't want to run into a problem 6, 8, 12 months down the line. What are others in the field saying? If we've learned anything in business, everyday business is becoming more like high school. Everyone gossips. Everyone talks about each other. Everyone is saying, don't do work with him. Do work with him. We're rushing to be with them. See what other people's reputations are. Run a background check. Ask your lawyer. Your lawyers have the ability to run background checks on people. Do the people that you're going to do business with have judgments against them personally? Well, that usually means that they're supporting the business. They have a lot of judgments. You may want to stay away. If they're in the newspaper for things that you don't want to be associated with, well, you may also want to stay away. And if you find nothing, well, maybe you want to work with them. From personal experience, I want to do a home renovation. Before I looked on Google or Facebook or Instagram, I went on the court's website. Has this home improvement contractor been sued? Do they have any complaints with them, with the towns or the village I live in the town of Huntington? Do they have any Suffolk County violations? No, they seem clean. I feel more comfortable working with them. And then who are you really working with? Are they the middleman or are they the decision maker? You may be in the manufacturing chain, you're providing a part that goes into a bigger part. Is the person you're working for really the one who's going to be making the decision, or is it someone further up in the relationship? If that's the case, well, what are they saying? What I'm going to ask for next are things that protect us in the event things go wrong. And through the course of the business, you may actually get this just from being with them. If you're a seller, ask for the buyer's bank account information or a voided check. Why? Now we know where the money is. If there's a problem, we know where to find it. If you have trust issues or you're worried, ask for a guarantee. Ask for a promissory note. Ask for something that backs up their performance. Because if they have skin in the game, you're more likely to be treated fairly. How are the payment terms? We're bidding out a job. We're going to be working on something. Well, we have to pay labor every week. We have to pay other expenses monthly. Is this going to line up with our business objectives? If not, let's try to negotiate those back. And what are my options if things start to go south? How do I get out of a bad deal? What are my termination rights? What are my dispute rights? What are my concerns? And all these things you're going to start asking yourself before you get into contracts. Because once you get into in a contract negotiation stage, you're going to want to be mindful for certain things.
All right, so blitzing with bad contract clauses. So all the terms you see here should be strictly defined. The last thing you want to do is expose yourself to liability by having these terms be open to interpretation and possibly turned against you. Starting with Latin terms. These may seem like they're just fancy terms that people just throw in a contract, but they carry a lot of legal significance. For example, prima facie. That means that someone may have sufficient evidence to establish a claim against you. So you might want to be aware of that. Caveat emptor literally means let the buyer beware. So if you're the buyer in a contract, as Seth said, perform your due diligence. Make sure what you're in for, because you might be held responsible for things that may come up in the contract without knowing about them. Pardon my French. Force majeure. These are going to be very important when things that are out of the party's control come up, right? So the COVID-19 pandemic, or what's happening right now with the Strait of Hormuz. Anything that happens that are beyond the party's control, but that directly will affect the party's performance of the contract are going to want to be explored ahead of time. Consequential damages. These are interesting because they're going to refer to damages that are not related to a breach directly, right? So, for example, if you're in a contract with a supplier and the supplier has delays in delivering materials, your client may face a fine or a penalty due to that delay. That would be an example of a consequential damage. Other types are loss of profits or even reputational harm. Things basically that were not foreseen at the time of making the contract, but that could damage you or your client and your client's business interests. Liquidated damages are more clear in the sense that they're straightforward. Your contract should say that you or the other side may be liable for a fixed amount of money if a specific event occurs. So if X happens, then you're liable for Y. Dispute resolution, as Seth said, extremely important. So usually arbitration, mediation, or litigation. These provisions are extremely important because they're going to affect the way that your future dispute takes place, how long that dispute will go on for, and how much that dispute will cost. So you really need to sit down with your attorney and assess each of these venues' advantages and disadvantages. For instance, the court systems are, very known for being slow. Sometimes cases are dormant within 3 or 4 years. Is that a risk that you want to take? Would you rather have a more expedient proceeding through arbitration, which may also be more costly? If you're involved with a consumer-facing business, arbitration proceedings are usually kept private, whereas court proceedings are, as Seth said, open to the public. So it's a very case-by-case analysis that you need to sit down with your attorney and decide what works best for you, your client, and your business interests. Finally, we have a note here about personal guarantees, which we're going to touch on in a couple slides. But again, if someone wants you to sign a personal guarantee, that means that you're going to be held personally responsible for any debt that's owed. So people can go after your house, any personal assets. Make sure that you read that. You make your attorney read it before signing it. Next slide, Seth.
Yes, Ms. Armand. And before we go to the next slide, this is interactive. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to stop us. We're happy to answer anything.
What are the main benefits of court proceeding? Ava sounded like she was saying it might be less expensive. Is there anything else that would justify waiting 4 years for an answer?
Some proceedings can only be brought in court. So for example, if you want to foreclose on a mechanics lien as a contractor, you can't bring it in court. Some parties may want a slow process. There are companies that will say, look, we'll keep this in court for years. You'll never see your money. With arbitration, there tends to be no right of appeal. So you have to be very certain on the arbitrator that you pick, because his or her decision is final. If you get a bad judge in Supreme Court, you can always appeal it, once as a right and potentially another time again. So there's different safeguards in place. But if you're a consumer-facing business, if you're an IT company or one of the companies that you see advertised regularly, you may not want to have a lengthy litigation history because that is a PR issue. Arbitration tends to get you a decision maker who's knowledgeable in the field, the business side of the field. So you'll get an arbitrator who only deals with commercial real estate disputes, tech IP disputes, or AI-related disputes. In the court system, generally, you're going to, it's a roll of the dice. You could get the judge who's known for slip and falls, who gets a contract dispute. There are some mechanisms around that, but you have less control over judge selection, length of case, and time to resolve. But it tends to be cheaper on the court side because you're paying $300 to start a lawsuit, and maybe your fees are going to be capped at all in for the court about $1,000, where arbitration, just to talk to them, is $1,000, and then you pay your judge by the hour. So there's different business realities. Also, if you're the party with the leverage and you're the one issuing contracts, you may want to make it as difficult as possible for the other side to get to the ultimate decision maker. So you may require mediation first. Then if mediation fails, then you can go to either arbitration or litigation. So, some parties want to rush to dispute resolution. Other parties may want to slow it down as long as possible. And there are benefits to going to mediation. Perhaps it's something where one side has a decision maker who's being unreasonable, and they need to hear from somebody who's not their lawyer, not the other side, and not their team, to basically say, hey, I'm not the judge, but this is what I think the judge will do. You may want to take a deep breath before things get concerning.
May I comment? I don't want to disrupt your slide presentation, but I always believe in prevention is better than cure. And I must admit that in my career, probably I've been dealing with bigger companies than this would address. But you did discuss a little bit credit assessment. And perhaps when you're already in the boat and there are holes in the boat and you've got to try and save it, it's never cheap. It's going to cost you money, and you've got to assess cost versus loss. And, you've given some great details on that aspect, but not on how to protect from the beginning. And there's some very good ways, excellent ways to protect from the beginning, which is where I would place the most emphasis. Is that fair?
I agree with you 100%. And, I always harken back to a story. I was in a networking group, and they say, we're talking about clients, prospective clients, and they go, what do you do when someone doesn't listen to you the first time? And, you had one business owner say, oh, I try to do this, proactive that. And it came to me, and I said, look, I make more money if you don't listen to me, right? Because for me to review a contract and to work with you through onboarding a client is going to be a lot cheaper than if I have to go to court. You control the more you can control the relationship with your other contracting party, the stronger everyone is. You're always better off with the resolution and the agreement that you make than what someone forces down your throat. So yes, know exactly who you're doing business with. If they're a credit risk, make sure you're taking steps to protect yourselves. Fine, depending on the deal, depending on the industry, collateral, guarantors, promissory
Insurance?
notes. What's that?
Insurance?
Insurance. Well, depending on the transaction, right? Title insurance, of course, D&O, E&O. If your builder's risk policy,
Straight credit insurance. There are
credit insurance,
large
receivables
companies
insurance.
that
Yeah,
provide credit insurance.
correct. I mean, we would gladly team up with a broker to talk about the various policies that are in place in the event that a job goes south. Especially in the construction area, we deal with a lot of surety bonds and those products to prevent against an underperforming or general contractor that fails to perform. So yes, absolutely. And one of Ava's slides noted that what are the bad terms? Well, if they're going to put a surety or a bonding requirement on you, that is very strong leverage for the stronger party. So yes, I agree with you. Anything you can do to mitigate the risks down the line, do it. Too many people, look, when pre-COVID, and I would say into very early COVID, when interest rates were so low, people were willing to take risks because they could be bailed out with cheap dollars and accessible dollars. That's not the case anymore. Money's hard to come by. So yeah, that the business strategy of, oh, I'll just expand my line of credit isn't there today. So all these preemptive steps are huge.
But maybe that's a topic for another webinar.
Yeah, maybe.
Can I ask a question? When it comes to like cost-saving technologies, and then you have to license them to companies, what are the what are the concerns that I should be worried about?
So your business is like an AI kind of agent for cost savings?
More explicitly, it's like you could say it's like you get more bang for your buck for the same toy products or for the same systems in place. This can get more value, like new technology that's been invented to license to toy companies or education institutions.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and we can talk more about it offline because it's a very specific question, but
Okay.
obviously protecting your intellectual property either through internal controls to determining what can be copyrighted or not, depending on or obtain intellectual property protection, depending on what it is. I'm not sure I follow exactly what your product is right now. Making sure you have the ability to pull back the license or to restrict access if someone's not paying. And there's ways to monitor whether someone's trying to copy your product, get into the code, seeing how you restrict access. But that's very intellectual property specific. And at the end of the day, you're still going to want to know who you're doing business with and do they have the ability to pay for what you're selling them.
Yes. Just a small add-on to that. If you don't know who you're dealing with 100% of the time, because there's so many unknowns, you're trying to give a list of what you should, like red flags, but isn't it always like 90% risk when you're dealing small company with big company?
Yes and no. Okay, I'll give you a very lawyer answer here. There are some things that you'll be able to change in a contract with a big company. There are some things that you won't. Lawyers are not magicians. I can't make Google say, yes, we're going to give you more favorable terms or we're going to be more relaxed on you than others in the field. And there's a level of business risk that you would have to take on by doing business with them. I will say that the stronger your relationship is, the less strict they may be in enforcing or utilizing the contract, right? So lawyers talk from a place of what could and what should happen. Ultimately, the way the parties work through their contract is what's going to control. So if, for example, you have a very strict notice provision that says, if you're going to sue me for extra damages or you're going to want extra money on this because you're doing extra work, you have to tell me in 2 days. But for the life of your relationship, oh, if you get it to me within a month, we'll get you paid, no problem. The contract is going to be secondary to how you actually do business together. Like courts aren't going to say, well, you guys were doing one thing one way, but the piece of paper says something else. We're going to be guided by the piece of paper. No two judges are alike. But if you're able to show that, yes, our relationship was more of a guideline than it was the law of the land, that's a different situation. But there will be companies that will say, if you don't get it to us by that know their contract so well inside out that if you deviate from it, it'll be like a game of operation and they'll buzz you. So, it depends. You can have the most perfect contract. You negotiate everything favorably to you. But once you're actually doing business together and the business realities overtake the best laid plans of the lawyers, that's what's going to control. So, yeah, we were supposed to tell you if we couldn't work because of the temperature, but you guys knew. Come on, give us a break. Of course you can have a break. They're going to have a hard time telling you 6 months later, no, we're going to be strict now, unless there's a clear reset of the relationship. So the field will control, the business relationship will control I just don't want you to be an unaware party walking into a buzzsaw and stepping on all the tripwires.
Very good. Okay, I'm have to interpret and implement some of that. That's actually very helpful. Thank you so much. Thanks,
Of
Seth.
course. Which dovetails directly into our next slide. Business relationship is going south. How do I protect myself? Get us involved sooner than later. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen someone put in an email, oh, I spoke to my attorney yesterday, he'll be in touch. No one wants to deal with us. We cost everyone money, we're uncertain, and we interfere with the business relationship, and all we do is add doubt. If you tell someone you're speaking with your lawyer, I would make sure you back it up and actually speak with your lawyer. 2, your lawyer can help you draft those responsive letters. I spend half my day, and they don't teach us this in law school, and Ava was kind of surprised when this was part of the job, is we write letters for companies all the time that go on their letterhead to make sure they don't say the wrong things. Hey, we haven't been paid in a while. We were going to send a lot of 4-letter words that weren't paid. In that situation, we say, guys, pump the brakes. Let us work on the response together to make sure you protect your contractual rights. Okay, no problem there. And then we can say, well, maybe you don't want to do this item of work because you're not required to under the contract. Don't get us involved sooner. To Mr. Katz's point, the earlier you get us involved, the more power we have and the cheaper it could potentially be. Maintain detailed records. A lot of industries are, oh, yeah, we just talked about it. Send a text, send an email. Please send something that you can screenshot later on. It will give you and your lawyer amazing confidence. Send monthly statements to non-performing party. You delivered something, you've never been paid. Every month, send an invoice. Ava will tell us why in a little bit. Make sure you're up to date on the notice, default, cure, and termination provisions. Say you're the one having trouble, and they're saying, get off my job site, or we don't want anything. After you freak out, and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Wait a second. The contract says they have to give me 10 days to un-F myself. I can do that in the next 10 days. Let me try to do that. And you write back and say, look, I get 10 days to fix this. This is how we're going to fix it. Don't terminate me. And if you're taking less than anything you're owed, or you're paying less than anything you're owed, make sure it's memorialized somewhere. The last thing I want is to get an invoice that's partially paid, and I have a client say, go after this, and they come back to me and say, oh no, we agreed to take 50% off. Oh, really? That's news to us. Everything that you're going to discount, or either way, you're getting a discount or you're giving it, or you're giving extended terms, or you're doing something that's outside of the contract, write it down somewhere. Even if it's not great for you today, the last thing you want is saying, well, me and the guy, I gave him 30 days. He comes back and says, no, he gave me 150 days. Have it established. And I'm sure you're tired of hearing from me, so Ava has some actual useful points.
May I just suppose one quick thing?
Sure.
I have found getting to the check signer, if it's owner to owner, if it's CFO to CFO, But just dealing with the purchaser won't get you results. But dealing with somebody who understands business as a whole, you have a much better chance before getting involved with a lawyer.
I'll two anecdotes to that. One is our job as business commercial attorneys is to help you get your business result, right? If that business result is sending an angry letter so the two decision makers of a company talk and come to a resolution, that's great, right? My job is to get you the result you want. If the result is, well, Seth, I want you to tie this up in litigation to make it hurt for them, that's something we can do. But after 2 months of that, the lawyer is the enemy when you have to write my checks instead of getting paid. So our job is to be a tool in your toolbox, right? So if it's a letter, if it's a lawsuit, if it's contract language or something, our goal is to get people to resolve their dispute. And we have leverage either through behind the scenes counseling, a lawsuit, a lien. Like, what makes me feel the most inadequate as a lawyer is when someone comes to me and says, Seth, let's do something. And my options are like, well, I can send a letter. They want action. My response is a postage stamp. So that letter is also powerful because it tells you they have a lawyer, they're ready to commit resources, and hopefully this brings people to the table. So I agree with you. Yes, the goal is to find your business resolution at any way possible. I don't litigate for the sake of litigating. There has to be a goal in mind, right? When I onboard a new client, I say, what do you guys want? What's your goal here? In 6 months, what do you want? In 3 weeks, what do you want? That way, everyone's on the same page. All right, Ava, I think the tire.
All right, okay, I'll go.
Yeah, go for it. The tire.
All right. So here are some tips that would give you or your client some leverage. The first thing on the list is the personal guarantees, promissory notes, and confession of judgments we previously talked about. These are tools that we use to hold a specific individual, right, within an entity, corporation, LLC, personally liable for the debt that you're owed. So if you're in a contract with an organization of any type, we strongly encourage that you execute one of these mechanisms to hold someone personally liable for that debt. And as Seth previously mentioned, if someone has skin in the game, they're more likely to pay out that debt, right? What is especially interesting with confession of judgments is that they allow you to bypass litigation entirely. So when someone executes a confession of judgment, basically they allow you to get a judgment against them for the debt that's owed, right? So you don't need to put in a lawsuit. You have your confession of judgment, bring it to a judge, and the next thing you need to do is go after the money directly. So it's a cost efficient and very expedient procedure that we use for our clients.
What's a confession of judgment?
What is it?
Yeah.
So it's literally, as the name indicates, it's something that you sign that says, I confess that I owe this debt to you. And if the day ever comes that I don't pay this debt, you can go to court and get a judgment against me. So really cost-effective, time-efficient mechanism. Restraining bank accounts is also something that we use post-judgment, right? So either you did a lawsuit, you obtain a judgment, good for you, or you had one of these tools available and you have your judgment this way. So what we do then is we issue restraining notices to the banks. The banks get them and they freeze the accounts. So whoever the debtor is cannot use their money in any way, shape, or form. So they better pay up, right? As Seth was mentioning earlier, sending monthly invoices. That's going to be particularly useful if we're looking to get the money through an account stated claim rather than a breach of contract claim. So the account stated claim is easier to prove because the only thing really you need to establish is that you send the other side invoices, they received them, they never objected to them, and that's it. As long as you can prove that you have these communications with the other side showing that you send them invoices, they received them, they accepted them, and they never objected to them, you got yourself an account stated claim. And finally, as always, we always advise that you keep all communications that are related to your contract or the performance of your contract in writing. It's easier to track for you, for us. It's harder to argue against, and it can always be used against someone else. Right, so.
And just last thing, very quickly on judgments. If you get a judgment, it serves as a lien on real property. So anyone in real estate knows that if you're looking to close on property and we have a judgment against you, you're not closing unless we're paid off. And that judgment can, one, be applied in the county where you live or the business lives, and any other county where you may have real estate. So you live in Nassau, but you have a Hamptons house, we can file it in Nassau and Suffolk and kind of gummy up your cash flow and ability to sell.
All right, and since as we mentioned previously, the majority of our clients are construction based, we thought it'd be useful for us to kind of touch base on the mechanisms that we used within the construction world. And the first thing on the list is mechanics lien. So when our construction clients don't get paid, we file a lien against the property. And what that does is it basically places a cloud on the title of the property, essentially preventing the owner from selling it or getting a mortgage on it. So it's another incentive to settle that debt. The time frame must be respected. So it's 4 months from completion of a residential contract and 8 months for a commercial contract. For you guys, that means that you basically have 1 quarter or 2 quarters to resolve that dispute before getting in touch with us so that we can file the lien on your behalf. Seth, anything you want to add?
Yeah, liens can be very powerful, or they can be as useless as filing a bond to get rid of them. They are very strictly construed time-wise. So, you have a meeting with a client 1 quarter and you say, look, we're still not paid on a job we finished. Keep a yellow sticky note there. If that debt is coming up at the next meeting, you may want to take some action because your leverage will be strongest when you can lien. Because if there's any financing on the property, it will freak a lender out for the most part. So I recommend getting that very quickly. Also, a lot of people, especially on the residential side, don't understand what a lien is, and they will absolutely freak out. And again, the goal is to have the conversation to get you paid. To be mindful of time, just a couple of very quick points. If you're running a job, if you're running a project, if you're running a relationship, have someone in-house, not a lawyer, who knows what your obligations are, what your deadlines are, so you can be mindful and stay ahead of them. Again, if there's issues on a job where you're not getting paid, someone wants to charge you, someone wants to hold you responsible for a poor performance, get in touch with us early. I can't tell you the number of businesses I've spoken with that wallow, silently suffer. Don't. We are attorneys and counselors. So that means we can give you business therapy. Come talk with us, please. Even if it's just for 10 minutes and we tell you it's not that bad, you got this, you will feel exponentially better. Post-game recap, really quick. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. You have to be proactive. You don't ask what you don't get what you don't ask for. So if you're, again, going to wallow, you're not going to get anything. For all you know, your upstream party, the party who you're in contract with, is already sitting on the money because they saw the problem before you. They're just not giving it to you until you ask. If a customer treats your competitors bad, you're not special, they'll treat you bad too. Have the nuclear football codes handy. Know the weaknesses, know your opportunities, and find your ways to get paid. Businesses, I can't tell you the number of times, and I hit on it before. We're not going to say anything because they don't want us to be mad at us. Okay, so you're the punching bag. So you're financing their job. The businesses that stand up for themselves are the ones that are likely to succeed. Stand up for yourself. It's your business. It's your reputation. It's your money. It's your future. It's you. If you're going to stand up for yourself somewhere else, stand up here. I'm not saying guns blazing every time, but know where your backbone is, know where your red lines are, keep them before you hit those red lines. Talk with your CFO, talk with your attorney. I promise you, you'll be surprised how reasonable things can be if you get us involved early. The fine print, don't take anything that we said as gospel. This is for educational purposes only. Things change early and often. Talk to us. We can let you know what the new rules, regulations, and what the world is and what the market is doing. We're always around to talk. One of our business issues is we don't charge enough and we don't charge often enough. So I'm likely to give you a lot of free legal work before I figure out how to charge you. That's a joke, but don't be afraid to pick up the phone. And again, Abe and I want to give a sincere thank you to the Imperial Advisory team, to Gershon, to Dean, and to all of you guys today for giving us a platform. And if there's any questions, we're here.
All right. We're going to put the poll up in a second. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we're just about 12, but sounds like our speakers will stay for questions. So you're all welcome to stay for a few more minutes. Seth, by the way, if you want help with your pricing, it's something that we help clients with.
Awesome.
We try to help people also make sure they get money, get paid, charge enough, et cetera, et cetera. But there's something I saw once, I forget, there's some kind of burger place where they used to always give out fries, and their policy was they would fill up whatever the cup was, and they would always then go and add a little bit more. And so sometimes that itself is a pricing strategy. The giving extra could be to help people feel good and feel comfortable, but sometimes it's not. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's Five Guys, and now they're getting dragged because each one of their burgers costing $30 a burger. So they're paying for it otherwise, which goes to the point of if you're not paying for it right now, you're going to be paying for it somewhere else.
I would suggest that the approaching attorneys up front is the best approach, and every contract that is not standard should be vetted by your attorney, especially if the other party is trying to make changes. I would never undertake a contract where I think I have risks that may come to bite me. It's not worth it in the long run. So you've got to be secure up front. I mention again credit companies because D&B and others have humongous records on everybody, and they will advise you if there's a higher risk, and they will monitor it and send you a message if the debtor is getting into trouble. So those are other ways of dealing with that. But really, I think, upfront homework is the answer, and then dealing owner to owner or CFO to CFO, not in letters, on a telephone call, personal. There you know very quickly what your next step is going to be. They're either going to agree or you're in with your attorney. But those are just some of the things, I've been the inside man checking contracts at previous employers. I'll just give you one example, which I think everybody would appreciate. We supply the automotive industry, mostly other suppliers. We had full quality qualifications, but they were doing sub-assemblies. We were supplying parts. Their contracts protected them against big parts, where there's a recall, where there's an accident, where you have to redesign the vehicle. And those are in those contracts. And without exception, I took them out. We argued over it while we were supplying, and they don't want to change suppliers midstream. But I never signed one where our company was at risk for that sort of thing. So when you're dealing with a big guy, either they want you to do business or not, but you can eliminate issues that are not within your control. And again, an attorney will help you get there.
Very fair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Well, Beth and Ava, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. It was a great presentation, very helpful. I think you're comfortable sharing this as well, and we can put it out there. Yeah, okay with that?
Absolutely. Thank you.
But again, thank you very much. It was very informative. Appreciate you guys coming on, and I'm sure we can add other topics as we move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Gershon,
Thank
anything
you
else?
both. No, thank you both. Thank you to everyone who joined, and we'll talk. I found it interesting. I'm sure others did as well, and hopefully we'll be able to make some intros from the poll. At least some of the people want to follow up with you guys.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank
Have a
you
great day.
all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.